Welcome to Veronica Live, and I'm here with my wingman John Salick today, and I've got a regular family member joining Veronica Live again, and that is Darin Gaub. He is the co-founder of Restore Liberty. He's also a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, and you see him on Fox News all the time. Welcome back, Darin.
Hi, Veronica. It's always a pleasure to join you from western Montana, where the mountains are beautiful when they're not on fire.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to kick it off because it's a little gloomy here in Florida, and tomorrow is the debate with our darling Kamala, who's only ever done one national interview, and tomorrow it's probably the one and only debate. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow with Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump?
Well, sometimes you just never really know, but I'm sure that Kamala will be, I guess you could say, well-groomed by her minders who will tell her not to say what she believes in, but to say what she thinks the people want to hear.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Donald Trump will do what he does, go after her, probably have some interesting names to call her that we may or may not have already heard. My hope, though, is that we do what is most effective, where Trump does what would be most effective against her, which is let her talk. The more she talks, the more people see her, the more people realize that she's nuts. And all he has to do is sit back and talk about, this is what I did in my first 4 years. This is what I'll do for the last 4 years. And if you wonder if it's going to work, well, it already did. Let's try it again.
That's very true. And do you think Kamala? I mean, she's chosen Tim Walz. So I wanted to ask you about the supposed. He keeps saying he's a retired command master sergeant. So the stolen valor. They've told him to knock it off. Yesterday, she released her policies. His rank was in there again. I don't know why this man. Do you think it's stolen valor? I mean, you're a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. How do you see this guy?
Well, and I know you're Air Force, so you gave him an Air Force rank, and I'm going to say in the Army he claims to be a command sergeant major.
Oh, sorry. And I keep changing it around. I've done this now multiple times.
I only know Navy, so I don't catch that stuff.
Well, only Navy knows Navy, so it's all fine.
That is true.
Honestly, I find Tim Walz to be, Tampon Tim, whatever name you want to give him. I find him to be an embarrassment and a liar.
Yeah.
He never served, or I should say, never retired with the rank of command sergeant major. And I've worked with many a command sergeant major over the years when I commanded a brigade and a battalion. And I loved working with them. In fact, they're still some of my best friends today. And that rank is a significant rank. And then when it comes to change of responsibility, change of level of accountability, and the kind of work it takes to succeed and do what such a person needs to do in order to be respectable and someone whose soldiers will follow. Tim Walz didn't earn the rank. He may have played it a little bit on TV, but he never did it in reality. And the claims of being in combat and all these kinds of things, veterans who've been there, who've done that, who know the difference, will just constantly look at him and realize that he's attempting to be, the second best clown in the circus, and the rest of us are just supposed to watch.
That's powerful.
Yeah, what bothered me, not so much the rank issue, but the fact that he bailed on his troops. When he knew they were going over there to deploy, he bailed out. And to me, that is that's a coward. That's worse than stealing the rank.
It is. It is worse than stealing the rank. I mean, it all adds up to it. Obviously, it's travesty, but I'm a guy who was in Afghanistan with a company command in 2004, and then came back and did not have to go back to Afghanistan, but I was offered a second company command in a different kind of company, a flight company, and I went back for another tour right away. In that tour, I got shot down a few times, nearly lost my life on multiple occasions, and it's one of those decisions that doesn't take any time if you know what leadership is and what it takes to soldier, what it takes to fight and win wars. You didn't have to ask me twice. In fact, I was actually in somewhat asking for it. I was like, come on, send me back. I can do more than that. I owe more than that. And there are many examples like mine across the Army of all ranks, people doing what they had to do and volunteering to step up and serve this country in multiple combat tours. And I stopped at 7. And I'm like, he wants to fake like he went to 1. And then he didn't go at all. And yes, he left his soldier behind right when he was needed the most. And so the question would be, if I were in front of him, I'm like, what did you run for? What did you run from? Well, I don't think he ever wanted to actually serve in combat and do what he signed up for.
Well,
that's the sad part,
Yeah. Because your troops, and like you said, like in the Air Force, only 1% ever make our chief master sergeant rank. They're the cream of the crop, and they're the best, and they're the leaders that people want to follow, and then he keeps pretending like he's won, and it's in the policies. It came out last night in the veteran section. It says the command sergeant major. I'm like, what the hell? And I saw the Megyn Kelly interview with a bunch of enlisted guys, the one that replaced him and stuff, and they're like, he's been told to knock it off multiple times, and he doesn't. So I'm just beyond my mouth on the floor over this one issue. Bothers me because he's been told to knock it off, and he doesn't. Darin?
No, he doesn't, and it seems like there's only so many people actually paying attention. But, on the other hand, isn't this kind of like the story of the last 4 years or more, given the campaign time, too? It's everything Biden-Harris, everything Harris-Walz, everything that's going on in D.C. is all about, no, we're just going to straight up lie to you, and we're going to pretend like we care. We're going to hope you're not paying any attention, that you also won't hold us to account for the things we do, while we hold nobody accountable for the things that we mess up too. So what does that look like at a national level, of course? Well, you end up with not a single person fired after Afghanistan when this report comes out 3 years later. And those of us who were screaming about it 3 years ago already knew what was wrong. So it just seems that they're just like, they're taunting people, saying we really don't care. We're just going to lie and just keep on lying.
Yeah, it's just awful. And the report we're talking about just came out from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and it's a 2-year investigation into America's chaotic, deadly Afghanistan withdrawal. It's 350 pages, and I sent you the one of the articles from one of the news sources this morning, and it pretty much says that Biden ignored everybody and didn't listen to anybody, and he just didn't care. He pulled out, and then he left all those civilians hanging there. So I wanted your thoughts on that, because I've become very aggressive on X as a baby Xer posting and trying to slay dragons. And all morning I've been attacked that this is Trump's problem. It failed because of Trump. And John and I were talking earlier, when you hand over, say, a battalion, a wing, whatever, now you're in charge and you get to make the decisions. And so I don't consider this a Trump problem, because he wasn't listening to anyone. Biden wasn't anyways. How do you see it?
It wasn't a Trump problem. I mean, ultimately, he had something in place. He had a conditions-based withdrawal that also depended on the Taliban doing certain things, such as not attacking American service members and various other things that were in there. And they did all that. They'd already broken the treaty, and we knew they would, because in the Middle East and Central Asia, specifically in those cultures, treaties are just deception and war. They're not ever going to actually abide by them. So that was baked in from the start. So Biden takes over. The treaty's null and void already anyways. Trump laid in place a process of we'll leave if you do certain things, which they failed to do. So essentially Biden was starting with a blank slate. And the first thing he did was give up the most strategic air base in the entire country, from which we would have to hold to the very last minute in order to leave there successfully at any point in history, much less 3 years ago. So he owns the entire thing. Biden and Harris both, the quote last person in the room, Harris,
Right.
who owns it as much as him. And this is a massive failure that could have been prevented by following basic protocols and how you do these things. And people can argue with me all day long until they find out that I'm the one who wrote the plan for how to evacuate Afghanistan in a non-combatant evacuation operation anyways. And if there was a checklist for how to do it wrong, Biden-Harris wrote it, and they followed it perfectly.
Well,
so what did you make of the recent Taliban parade, where they were displaying all this wonderful equipment that we supposedly had left inoperable and disabled, helicopters and all kinds of vehicles and stuff. What did you I'm sure you must have been outraged at watching that.
Oh, for sure. And of course, I'm a Blackhawk pilot, and I'm watching Blackhawks get flown by in that parade as well. But all of it's embarrassing. All of it is just another symbol of the weakness and fecklessness of this entire administration and all the decisions that they made, and the advice that they got, whether it was received, ignored, or not even received because the people just stopped trying to give it because they knew that they weren't listening in the first place. But one of the things I also like to highlight in the midst of that entire parade of, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that some of that equipment was not left there by us. It's very new, and it's Chinese. And China's been in Afghanistan since at least 2004, when I personally saw them staking out mining claims and various mineral rights across the country. And that was allowed to happen. And normally that would be something people would be like, oh, you're making that up. It'd be like, except for the fact that I saw it with my own eyes. It was very obvious. So that parade was not only a parade of the stuff that we left behind in a failed endeavor and under a terrible administration's decision, it proves just how quickly and how ingrained China is in Afghanistan, and always has been.
It's amazing, how much I don't know how many billions we spent on Bagram, equipping it and improving it and everything else, and now it's a Chinese base. We gifted
so
the Chinese billions of dollars worth of construction and a critical defense location.
Absolutely, and my Twitter page, X, whatever you want to call it now. I put an overhead photo of both Bagram and Kabul, and said, "Here's the reason why you never want to do something like what we did in Kabul, and we needed to use Bagram. When you look around Kabul, you see that it's surrounded by buildings, and millions of people, 4 million people or so in Kabul. Most of those buildings are on high-rise terrain, mountains and stuff surrounding the airfield. All of that can see directly down into the airport. The airport's dual use. It's civilian and military both. It's harder to control that way. And everything from a security perspective was exactly wrong. Juxtapose that against the picture of Bagram. Bagram is in the middle of nowhere. It's a lily pad. And you would have to try really hard to reach it and be unseen. I've flown the entire perimeter and all over that area of the country, and it's just a wasteland for the most part surrounding that airbase. There's a reason why the Russians put it there and survived off of it. No one can approach it without being seen for all intents and purposes. And it's the perfect place to do that operation, and it's the first thing we gave up.
Yeah, it was shocking.
So what do you think's behind that? I'm just curious if you had any theories on that. I mean, obviously there's some degree of incompetence in there, but is it indifference, or is this an intentional weakening of America?
I think it's intentional. In fact, I wrote that in my Substack and wrote an article called "Failure is the Plan." At this level of failure across multiple different endeavors, it has to be the plan. It cannot be just sheer incompetence. Now, granted, you're looking at an administration who've taken incompetence to a whole new level. But, I mean, the message of Kabul had to be sent. It had to be heard in order for us to see the follow-on conflicts in Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, China's militarization, the opening of our southern border, and all the things that are coming across there. So many things that my organization and people I work with have predicted have come true years in advance. And so now we sit here today going, well, you kind of wonder why we bring all the wrong people out in public to talk about what is happening rather than talking to the people that will tell you what will happen and how to prevent it. But it's politics, and unfortunately it's also people who want office, who seek power, who seek leverage, doing the wrong thing. And I'm convinced that to this day that this administration is just a proxy for those who want to see America destroyed, and they're following in line and doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Do you think?
I've been struggling to make sense of these goings on in the world. You look at, take Ukraine. Here on one hand we're sending all these weapons, all these billions and billions of dollars in aid, and then we're turning around and we're letting Russia. We're essentially aiding Russia and selling oil to finance their war operations against the Ukrainians, which we're funding. I mean, the same thing's going on in the Middle East. We give Israel aid, but we give all this money that Hamas uses to build tunnels. The Houthis, you're out there trying to blow up oil tankers that are carrying Iranian and Iraqi oil, through the strait there. And it's like this, it's like crazy. And there's no rhyme or reason to it, but we seem to be working both ends, and there's no middle to work it against, Yeah,
the phrase that comes to mind quite often is with friends like these, who needs enemies?
Yeah.
And I'm all for supporting the Israelis in this. And I've been clear about that for a very long time, from even before this whole thing happened, because we were just waiting to see what it was. But for us to hypocritically call out Hamas and say how terrible they are and how this is such a heinous act while we're still giving a single penny to the United Nations is the height of ridiculous. We've all seen routinely the employees of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency there right in Gaza. And that's just one example of how we are funding, directly and indirectly, the very same people that we're also saying are at fault for murder and terrorism. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran. I mean, essentially, let's just go ahead and open up the floodgates and say North Korea, Russia, China. I mean, why stop? Because eventually you're going to get to the point where we realize that we're funding all of it in some way. And all the money we're giving to China in the trade wars and other things that we're doing with them owning businesses and lands and various commodities across the U.S., I mean, it's all coming back to us in negative ways. It's all seeking to destroy us. And I mean, I didn't come on the radio today with the intention of trying to paint an extraordinarily sad and depressing story, but if we don't realize what the truth is, then we'll never realize the fact that we need to get involved in various places that are necessary in order to fix the problem.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about your Substack, because you write one, Equipping the Saints in 2024, and the way I read it, and John and I believe this, that we need to preach from the pulpit, and that means politics, and you talk about culture and civics that shape our society. So are you finding that preachers don't want to do this, and pastors? I mean, we just had a Catholic priest on. He's been one of my priests that I've known for like a long time, and he does, and I love it. Why are people so scared to preach the truth? Because we need, if all the I've had. When was that? Last year, I had Pastor Rafael Cruz on the show, and he said if every evangelical Christian voted, we would win. But they don't come and vote. So,
yeah.
So tell me about this Substack, because I know you're very godly and, pastor doing things. trying to wake up the church to join our team.
Yes, and thank you for saying Raphael's name. I have spoken alongside him down in a VFW hall in Texas, Tarrant County, Texas, and it was phenomenal. His story will make any of us look average. It's incredible. For those who've never heard it, they should find a way to learn it. But I will certainly not use the word all. That all pastors and preachers and stuff have no desire to engage in this, because there are phenomenal pastors and people in similar roles that are doing this. In some ways, I like to think that I am through my own means as well, because I've taught and preached in churches for years, but this is where I'm at now. But why aren't they doing it? Well, one, maybe they don't even know what the Bible commands them to do in the first place. Two, some have been captured by the system of the whole nonprofit laws and agencies saying you can't engage in politics. And somehow we turn that into you can't tell the truth in church. And the point of that particular Substack was that if Paul were to write the New Testament today and engage with the church, he'd be telling us through that agency and ultimately God would be telling us to engage in educating and equipping the saints about things like DEI, environmental social governance, the LGBTQ mafia and agenda that goes with it, all of these different cultural factors that are degrading and eroding our society from the bottom up. Well, that's what the church and biblical truth is supposed to do, is be the dominant voice in the culture. Because when we do that, we can point to God, who is perfect, and say that is the only measuring stick that matters. You'll never achieve it until physical death. We know that. But if we are all being led by God the best we can, seeking to do the things that are biblical truth, biblical mandates, that lead to the kind of culture that we want, of truth, of decency, of honesty, of accountability among our peers, then we can only get better than where we are right now. That's for sure. We're not going to be perfect, and we know that. But we have to be loud, vocal, truth-focused, and using the sword that is the Spirit and the Word the way we're supposed to. People will still make their own choices. They're still going to sin. We're all going to sin, and things are just going to proceed the way they proceed. But it cannot be, and it should not be, because the church has abdicated its position in front of this nation and leading from the front, instead of sitting inside of our four walls and saying, don't engage society because we're a nonprofit. We can't risk that, and many other things. So if someone out there is listening and they're a pastor sitting on the edge of making a decision, or they're a member of the church and they're silently letting their pastor not address these issues, please get out there and demand that they do. And if you're the pastor, demand it of yourself, because your nation needs you, just like they did the Black Robe Regiment pastors in the Revolutionary War. So I'm on the field of battle, along with many hundreds of more, and I just hope others will join us.
Well,
Darin, one thing that people don't seem to understand, and we had somewhat similar discussion with Father O, who, by the way, he is a combat priest, believe it or not, Air Force retired Air Force chaplain. But he was actually over there in Afghanistan in combat and being fired at. Okay, so but what we were talking about was a moral compass, and you're an aviator. I'm an aviator. Veronica's husband's an aviator. She's been in this business for a long time. We find our way using maps, right? Without a map, right, you're lost. So how when we talk about these moral discussions, it's nothing more than a map. You have to know where you're going, or to get where you're going, you have to know where you're at. And you have to see things in order to get there. And so many religions these days seem to forget the map part. They just get up there
Right.
and talk good times, but forget the map part, and how do you get the flock, to follow you?
Well, you don't know this, and just for your listeners, this was not a set-up question. So, and you'll see why. I have been teaching biblical apologetics for over 30 years, whether it be in Afghanistan or Europe or Korea, wherever, it doesn't matter. And I have the typical slide you stick up there that says, here's the topics we're discussing. And the next slide is just simply an arrow, and it points north. And I spend an hour on that arrow. And the whole point of the entire thing is, if you, like you said, John, if you know where you are and you know where you're going, then you've got half the battle figured out. Now you got to start walking. That doesn't mean that you're not going to go off course now and again, but you've got to come back to true north. Because if you keep going the direction you're going, if you're 1 degree off or 10 degrees off or 40 degrees off, it doesn't matter. By the time you get 50 miles down the road, you're no longer going where you're supposed to. And that's where the accountability piece comes in. My group has a great accountability system amongst us. We're all checking each other. And that's what's critical. It's like, hey, you're 2 degrees off. Come back. Come on back. Welcome to being human. And I think pastors need to let people know that. The whole point is that you're not going to start in one point, get to the other point, and be perfect at all points in between. It takes, first of all, God of the Holy Spirit, and then it takes the accountability partners we surround ourselves with who are also trying to do their best. And eventually we'll get there. And it'll be ugly. You're going to look a little bit like a guy on a map who may not always know where he's going, and it's going to be all kinds of twists and turns and various things. But if you get there, you get there. And we're not going to be perfect. We can't expect that. But if there's a north-seeking arrow, America today is going south.
Well, I agree with that, and that's what I wanted to ask you about too. Is I watched the DNC for 4 days, and every speech was literally about killing babies. Every single speech. Plus, they had the food truck out, and they were so proud they killed 25 babies to start the convention off with. I just feel like the Democrat Party has lost their way, and who can be on that team and not have clarity with just everything. And so I wanted you to talk about that, and then the immigration piece, because at least 10 million people have been let into the country, and as Christians, I want to help people, but I don't know who these people are, and so there's all this crime happening against Americans, and the Dems don't care. They don't care. So I wanted your thoughts on that, because abortion is just huge. There's her big bus is traveling around to 50 locations, the reproductive freedom bus. And then when you look through the policy, she kind of says that Trump's going to take away birth control again. I mean, it's these same lies over and over again. So, Darin, how do you see it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the DNC speaks for itself in so many ways. I honestly, I couldn't even watch it. I got some reports from friends and family and other people who were just doing their best to see, like, what's this going to be about? And it was just so terrible
it so
that everybody
negative.
turned it off.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to gloss over the other side either, because I was sitting on the floor as a delegate at the RNC convention for Montana. A Montana delegate, and my goal, I'd never been to one of these before, and good luck finding me at the next one. But it's interesting to see the difference when you look from the macro scale of the patriotism, the energy, the general, the happiness, and if you really truly want to see the biggest difference, how did the law enforcement who were on site respond? By the end of the convention in Milwaukee, and well, frankly, and even all points in between, these law enforcement officers and federal marshals and all these different flavors of people were largely bored to tears, because we're rambunctious, but we're law-abiding and decent people in the vast majority. It was such a difference clearly at Chicago with the riots and everything else like that. The joy was joy. I think that word and weird have been misused lately.
I want it back. The rainbow. I've been fighting to get my rainbow back forever. So.
Well, go into my Substack and find the one I write about the rainbow.
We talked about that one with you.
Yeah. They're still missing a color no matter what. But, all of that is just indicative of a party that's captured by communist ideology in total. And that was always one of the communist goals of going back to the days of the Soviet Union, was to capture one of the American political parties. What most people didn't also realize that was they've captured about half of the Republican Party, too. Now, it's up to people like us to fix that. We do the best we can within that. And I hate the party structure. I hate the meetings and the rules and all that ridiculousness. But if that's where the game's going to be played now, then I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it better than them, and I'm going to take it over the best I can and get decent people in. I just got back from the Freedom Caucus national meeting in Dallas for all of us types of people who were there for that. There wasn't a single Democrat, and that's not our fault. That's theirs. Oh, by the way, there was only so many Republicans because there's a lot of them fighting us too. But, what are they all fighting us on? Most of it revolves around money. But you also asked me to talk about immigration. So let's just set aside the simple fact that the two national conventions show the big gulf between the two different sides of America. Call it 49%, and 2% kind of wandering around. Well, they're all going to find out very quickly what these people in general, regardless of party, have allowed to happen with the flooding of 10 million people across our border, unchecked in any way that counts, spread throughout America. And people like to laugh about the fact that, oh, look, Abbott's throwing them on buses and taking them to New York or wherever else. It's like, no, that's called taxpayer-funded transportation of terror cells to different states. And if they're not actually terror cells, they're people of vastly different cultures who come here and move to places like Springfield, Ohio, and kill pets and animals and wildlife and feed off of them. And you can pick up so many examples, but if Americans don't come to realize the fact that this entire thing was, 1, intentional, 2, nation-changing, 3, extremely high risk and could leave our country towards an internal conflict that'll be bloody. And it's not that we want it, but it's forced upon us. That's what this is. And we have to be ready for that. And some of the politics games are going to all come home to roost when our nation could potentially go extremely violent because of all these people.
Well,
you've certainly seen a good example of that in Colorado. That story in Aurora where they have the Nicaraguan gangs basically taking over housing units.
Mm-hmm. It's really weird though, because there's all these stories saying it's not true, yet you see it on national media saying it is true, and I've gotten flack on X saying that I'm making it up. So.
And the mayor's blaming the federal government. The mayor's saying, "Well, we can't do anything about it. It's the federal government's problem." It's like, well.
Now
a couple things there. One of them, I'm the one who blew that story up, so I know it's true. I use my network of people to do it.
Really?
So, it's like we're not always the loudest when it comes to like running around out there being merchants and fundraisers, but. We blew that one up pretty big. I posted it, and it was very quickly had about 11,000 views of the video, and I got it through my Global Veterans Coalition people. So we know it's true. We know the Venezuelans are all over the place with their violent gangs, and people can blow you up on Twitter all they want, I guess, but what they're going to run into is a simple fact that they're wrong, and they're just going to have to get used to it.
Well,
and by the way, they could be a victim of said violence too.
Yes, exactly. And your latest Substack too is called the Intel Nation, and So I wanted you to talk about that because you talk about that we're all intel collectors, and which I'm the queen. I have like 250,000 pictures on my phone that I've taken, and about 5,000 videos. So I wanted you to talk about that because where were you with the assassination? Because you tie all that in as well. What were you doing when you got the? How did you find out that
Sure.
Trump had been almost assassinated? And then talk about the intel collectors.
Well, I was at an event and my phone blew up because the different other state directors of the State Freedom Caucus Network, of which I do that for Montana, had highlighted that had happened. And then I kind of all eyes turned towards that. And I think every one of us very quickly saw videos and pictures. And next thing you know, you're getting background checks on Thomas Cook. So you're getting people talking about angles and azimuths of fire and kinds of weapons and where was the Secret Service. And it's just all this information that came out so fast, the media actually lost the narrative. And even the good media did too, because they're trying to figure out what's going on because they had maybe one or two reporters in the camera there. But what was most powerful was 15,000 Americans with cell phones, recording audio, recording video, taking pictures, reporting to their friends, posting to social media. And then when you get experts involved, like other former snipers, other security company owners like myself, veterans like myself as well, and you guys, and I mean, you start getting all this expertise. You start getting all the information out extremely quickly. You bypass the media, and there's clearly risk because you can sometimes form conclusions too early. Yeah, we know this.
Yep.
But on the other hand, do you want to rely on a few sole outlets to tell you what happened when the person talking to you probably hasn't got a clue about any of it from a technical side, from a procedure side, and frankly wasn't even there. In the meantime, we're talking to people who were 3 people down from the fireman who got shot, going, what happened from your perspective? And, ideally, from my perspective, if we had 3,243 county guardians that were part of Restore Liberty, along with all 50 states involved, and we managed to just collect intelligence and information from across this country, whether it be your county commission, your state legislature, your sheriff, it's all of that. And we all shared amongst ourselves, and we all blasted it out to every media source we had. And then Blaine Holt and I, the 2 co-founders of Restore Liberty, who were on the news a lot, were able to keep feeding this to meaningful media. Then we can bypass all the lies and get to the truth so much faster than, I don't know, a congressional report that comes 3 years after an event and all the damage is done.
So true.
Well, and you saw a lot of the media at that time too, because some of the initial reports were, and it took a long time for some of the liberal media to actually admit it was even an assassination attempt.
Oh my gosh! And then all those
headlines,
the
way they were characterizing
embarrassing.
it. Yeah.
It was. The headlines were interesting. Loud noises at a Trump rally.
Yeah.
Banging occurs and people look. Whatever. I mean, I'm trying to think of the most ridiculous thing I can, but you can never.
The most
really
ridiculous one.
He was
in the mainstream.
Shuffled off the stage or something.
They had to call the ambulance. No, they had to call the ambulance because people were passing out from the heat. They called the ambulance because somebody had been shot.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
and so they lost that narrative very quickly, and the truth got out there. And this wasn't a 20-year-old kid that was just disaffected and angry at Trump. But he had a whole support system. The question is, will the congressional committee that's investigating it be able to find it and be willing to come out with it?
Well, I hope he does. What do you think he's going to win Trump in November? I'm like, it's, I keep joking. I've never done a Xanax, but I think I might need one. So how are we going to?
I'm just going to go to sleep and wake up the next day because it won't be answered anyways.
Yeah,
well,
maybe a while before
Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm a little concerned.
Right.
So, do you think we're going to win, Darin?
That's a loaded question. Um,
Well, make me happy. Alan West
I know
said
we're
we
going to
were
win.
going to
It's just a
win.
matter of how long till we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to win. We're going to win. And I go back to my equipping the saints and the message behind that for the reason why we're going to win. Does that mean we're going to win the election? Well, maybe.
Okay.
In a legitimate election where you don't have secretaries of state in places like, I don't know, Michigan, Wisconsin, and other places playing games, where you don't have illegal aliens getting driver's licenses and voting registration, you don't have all mail ballots. I think you'd see a swamping that would make Reagan's revolution look pretty tame.
Well,
but
I like that answer.
That's true.
Now.
But you know, I was going to say the cheating is such a factor, and hopefully we can get enough turnout to overcome the cheating. I mean, it's sad to say that in America, and here you have the Democrats saying that Donald Trump's the threat to democracy. It's like, no, the Democrat Party is the threat to democracy, because they're doing everything they can, as they usually do, to lie, cheat, and steal, you know, to win the election.
Well, and the Cheneys are doing their part. The so-called 200 Republicans from various administrations. How many other examples can you come up with of, I don't know, a headliner on Fox News, retired generals say that Trump's a threat to democracy. I'm like, no one even knows who these generals are. They were irrelevant then, they're irrelevant now.
Well, hopefully we win.
I don't generally
Darin.
rely on
we're going to have you back, and I'm so excited because you are on X. You're a newbie. He's a baby Xer, John. It's DL Gaub, Gaub on X, and because I just went over 5.1 million views, Darin. So you got to catch me, and it's I've only got that check mark a few months ago, so I've been working hard, slaying those liberal dragons. Getting, oh my gosh, they send you terrible stuff. It's terrible.
Well, he probably has more.
I'm up to 117 followers, so you know I'm doing pretty dang good.
Well, I'm going to share the show with you.
I only have 17. Okay, 17 for Wingman John.
Well, I've been working.
Well, I started in August, so
I know, and I started with the check mark in April, and I'm at 5.1 million. So I know you're going to catch me because you have more people that follow you in the world. But it's been such a pleasure, and we got to catch up with you. I'll text you tomorrow night during the debate. Oh my goodness, I hope we survive. But you know, we definitely need God on our team to do it. So, and I know you've been fighting that spiritual warfare battle as well. And it's been such a pleasure having you on Veronica Live again. And you can follow all of his work at Restore Liberty. They're on Facebook, restore-liberty.org. And then his new X, DLGAUB. And I'm so excited you've joined the X family, because that's really where the political freedom is, right there. But if you're ever, a little hint, if you write bomb or shooting or assassination or killing, you got to change, you got to write the word wrong, or you'll end up in jail, because I've been in jail, Darin, a couple times for a week.
Ex-jail. It's a terrible place to be.
Because I said the last time I was in jail was a few weeks ago, because I said that darling Kamala would not show up to the debate because she'll say she has COVID, and I ended up in X jail for a week for that statement, actually. And that's not even like a bad statement. So
no, it's not. And I've been kicked off of X, Twitter, whatever, twice, permanently off of Facebook.
Oh.
I can't even log on to the page.
Well,
and Instagram has been like, what? So that's Meta.
Right. Yeah.
So whatever.
Well, we'll have you back, and
I'm not stopping though.
Well, I love it. We've been again talking with Darin Gaub from Restore Liberty, and you're the co-founder, and you're a retired Army Blackhawk pilot. So go Army, beat Navy, and John always cries when I say that.
No.
God bless you, Darin, and thanks for joining us.
And thank you both. God bless you and all your listeners, and get out there and get busy.
Okay, Veronica Live out.